Hello, my name is Kathleen Lugerich, and I'm the Senior Director of Historical Initiatives and Educational Development at the Army Historical Foundation. And today I'm speaking with Mr. Jeff Evans, who is a Gold Star family member and the founder of the Highway 39 Foundation, which supports Gold Star kids and families to further their education through scholarship and financial assistance. Mr. Evans, thank you so much for reaching out to us and sharing your family's story. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a recently retired educator. I spent 31 years in the state of Nevada as an educator. I finished off as a principal in a small town in central Nevada with about 400 kids or 400 people, about 100 kids in Eureka, Nevada. Um, Majority of my career was spent at Douglas High School, where I have lived for the last 30 some odd years. I have two wonderful children. I have a son, Austin, who is a firefighter paramedic up at Lake Tahoe. And my youngest son, Jake, is a critical care flight medic with the National Guard based out of Reno, the 258th. And he's also a paramedic with RIMSA, which is an ambulance company in Reno. And I've been married next week for 34 years to my beautiful wife, Dina.
Now, you have mentioned in several of your speaking engagements that you're part of a club that no one wants to be in.
Correct, the Gold Star Club. It's an honor to be in it, but I would rather have that honor be shared in another way. And the Gold Star Club is where you've had someone lost in the line of war, um, someone that's been active duty. And I've lost several people. Um, and I've been doing quite a bit of stuff with Gold Star in Northern Nevada since I've been retired. And it's nice to know that there are other people out there like you that have experienced the same loss. And we have a unique bond with each other. We've all lost someone. Our scenarios were different, how we lost them, but our outcomes have all been the same. And it's good to have people that you can relate to that have experienced the same thing.
And who were those? You've lost several members of your family, for which I'm very sorry, but very grateful for their service and your service as a Gold Star family member. But
Thank you.
can you start off by telling us about your father and your uncle?
So October 24th in 1968, my uncle, Specialist 4, David Lynn Evans, was on a recon mission. He was a door gunner in a helicopter, and he was flying into a camp with special ops soldiers that they were retrieving them and taking them out. There was no roads into this camp, so the helicopters were their only contact with civilization, basically. So on the way back, my uncle's helicopter came under fire, and in a kind of a controlled crash, um, when they hit the ground, my uncle stayed on the machine gun, allowing the soldiers that survived the crash to make it to safety to the jungle. And it was during this time that my uncle was shot and killed. My uncle was 19 years old at the time. That's the average age of soldiers killed in Vietnam. And my dad was over there at the same time. And fast forward to November 24th, 1970, my dad was on his second tour, and my dad was in an RU-6A Beaver aircraft. They were doing a reconnaissance mission, gathering intel, and they were hit by a Vietnamese Huey helicopter that was ascending, and it was a catastrophic crash. There were 17 people killed. There were 4 people on my dad's airplane, and I think 13 Vietnamese soldiers on the airplane that were killed. So within the span of 2 years and a month, lost my uncle and then my dad. And when my uncle was killed, I was about 6 months old. And when my dad was killed, I was 2 years old. My younger brother was 1 year old. My dad was 23 at the time of his death, and my mom was 23 also. So the course of my life changed dramatically at that time before I really remember anything.
Yeah, and since you were so young, do you have any favorite stories that your family members like to tell about your father and uncle?
Um, just that they were fun loving, they were family oriented, they loved God, their family, their country. Um, they felt that they had a very important job to do in Vietnam, and they were hardcore about doing that job, getting that job done. And um, they both were very artistic. I have lots of art that my dad did. I have my dad's guitar that he played actually in Vietnam. One of my bucket list items I told myself to do, I was going to learn to play that guitar. And I did, probably not very well. Um, and my dad was also a boxer. My dad raced cars, and I know this because I have two small trophies that he won when he did competed in both of those. My uncle was a songwriter. My uncle was a poet, and he also played guitar. And I don't know a lot about my uncle other than, just what family has told me, but I do have some memorabilia of his and try to, you know, at this point in my life, being retired, my job is to never let them be forgotten. And so I'm doing a lot of speaking, and I think it's important. People need to know why we have what we have is because there's been some sacrifices made.
No, and thank you for sharing your story and their story with us today. So, you've done a lot of research into their service. So, tell me a little bit about your journey and your research.
So with my dad, obviously it started with my family and stories from my family. And honestly, with the onset of the internet,
Mhm.
and you start looking around and realize that there's a thing called the Vietnam Virtual Wall, or there are websites dedicated to the units that they served with. I've actually not met, but met via internet, met via emails of soldiers that have served with them. And it's through those soldiers I've learned a lot more about them. I've learned a lot more about their service in Vietnam. I've learned, what their favorite beer was, what their favorite cigarettes were. I learned that my dad told as bad of jokes as I tell. And it's fun to learn that stuff because it's a completely different environment, than a family barbecue. And it's that research has allowed me to kind of delve further into their service via the government and just requesting information on them and just learning more about them. For example, I've received stuff that, this is what my dad had on him when he died. I never knew that stuff. And I remember finding a picture on the internet once of the actual plane my dad flew in when he was killed. And to see that picture and to match that tail number up with the actual one that he was in when he died, it's very, very emotional. It's very satisfying to find out stuff that otherwise I would have never known. But I guess I spend a lot of time just browsing and trying to find information. And every once in a great while, you find something, and it's pretty cool.
And speaking of emotional, you said you recently had gone on a trip with your family to Vietnam to see where the locations of where they both died. What else did you find in Vietnam?
Well, that was a lot of the research that we did, and it was about a 13-month process trying to find, writing the government, trying to find the actual coordinates of where they died. If I'm going to go to Vietnam, I want to visit those spots. And it took about 13 months. I would get packets of manila envelopes full of information. And this is where I found out a lot of the research. Um, but I couldn't find the coordinates, couldn't find the coordinates. About 13 months later, I had a Vietnam vet that went overboard trying to help me. And eventually I got two maps that had the coordinates of where they both died. So we started planning a trip, and the travel company that we used provided us with a guide and an interpreter. And this man will forever be our family friend because he went out of his way to help us. On day one in Vietnam, we got in a van and we drove about 2 hours southwest of Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon, and we were in the jungle. We were out in the middle of nowhere. And this is kind of stuff how horror movies start out. You're just trusting that you're going with the right person. And 2 hours into the jungle, we stopped in front of this house, and I was like, "Is this it? Is this the spot?" And he goes, "No, we still have to walk, but we need to ask permission from the owner of this farmhouse if we can walk." So we walked on this path through the jungle. We're going past rice paddies, through swamps, through mud. And finally, after about 20 minutes of walking, our guide says, "This is the spot." And this is the spot that we're looking for my uncle. He goes, this is the spot. And I start looking around and I'm looking around, and I had studied those satellite maps for so much that I actually recognized this area from the ground. And I'm just like, just trying to imagine the gunfight and the helicopter crash and my uncle out in this field. It was very, very surreal. And there was myself, my two boys, my daughter-in-law, and my wife that were with us, and our guide. There's two small farmhouses out in this area. There's a small path that goes through that people ride mopeds through. And some of the farmers started to filter out. There was about 6 or 8 of them that started filtering out, and they're looking at us. They're going, "What's going on here?" We're not something that they see in the jungle every day, And an older woman filtered out. She started walking out, and we start looking around. And I asked our guide to go ask her if she was here in 1968, and he asked her, and sure enough, she goes, "Oh yeah, I was born and raised here." And I went, "Oh my gosh!" I go, "Ask her if she remembers a helicopter crash and a gunfight." And as soon as he asked her that, she pointed right there, right to the spot. And my wife and kids and I were just like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And she remembered it because she was there. And she said, as soon as she said it, she goes, "October 1968." And obviously the tears are flowing. But the validation of 13 months of searching, and then you're traveling 8,000 miles, and now you're 2.5 hours into the jungle. Am I going to be in the right spot? And now I know I was in the right spot because I met someone that was there. And, it was incredible. And then I asked our guide, I said, "Tell her who I am. Tell her that I'm the nephew of the soldier that was on the machine gun." And as soon as I said that, the locals were offering us homemade rice wine in honor of my uncle. They were offering us fruit that they had grown. The best part of our trip was the people, bar none. The best part was the people. And we were concerned at first, how were they going to receive us? And as soon as they heard our story, I can't even begin to tell you the level of sincerity that it changed the trip. After the rice wine, the older lady, she says, "Have you guys seen the memorial?" And we go, "Memorial? What are you talking about?" And she points to the memorial and she goes, "That memorial was built for the Vietnamese soldiers that died in the area." And we're getting this through our interpreter. The Vietnamese soldiers that died in the area, and one of yours, one American. And our guide goes, "That has to be your uncle." And we go, and she's nodding. The woman is nodding. And so we walked over there. He pointed out on the memorial something that signified a helicopter. And he goes, "Yeah, this has to be your uncle." So all of this happened to us on day 1 in Vietnam. And we're just like, my dad was with us on that. I can't even talk to you about it right now without getting emotional. So all of this happens. The second day we just did some sightseeing. And day 3, we were going to go find where my dad was killed. And I knew he had been killed on an island in the middle of the Hao River in Can Tho, Vietnam. And after our guide had taken us to the right spot, I had nothing but trust in him that he was going to take us to, where we were going on this island. So he pulls us up to this island, and we get off the boat. We start walking, and the vegetation is very thick, and the trail was very minimal. And we kept going a little bit farther, and all of a sudden my wife goes, "Oh my gosh." And I look back, and there was some sort of bug that we had never seen before had landed on her. And so then I said to our guide to go, "How much further?" And he goes, "Oh, just a little bit farther. We just got to go a little bit farther." And we get a little bit farther, and now there's no trail. The vegetation is taller than our heads. And I said again, "How much further?" And he goes, "It's just right there, like 10 feet, 20 feet, something like that." He goes, "But now we have to be careful of snakes." And as soon as he says that, of course, my wife and my daughter-in-law are going, "Snakes?" And talking to a Vietnam vet once we got back home, those were called 2-minute snakes, that you were dead 2 minutes after they bit you. So I go, "You know what? I don't need to go 10 feet. That's good. This is the spot, plus a helicopter and airplane, they probably covered a large area." So looking at that, where my dad was killed, the island was so beautiful and so green and so peaceful. And so trying to imagine that, in 1970 Vietnam during a war, um, the Vietnamese use incense to honor the dead. So they had brought, our guide had brought incense. We put incense in the ground and burned it. And hopefully that'll be there for a while, because I don't see anybody being on this part of this island. Um, but I just felt, everybody's like, oh, you came to grips with it, you closed a chapter, whatever. And I go, no, I think I felt a connection. I felt a connection to a dad I never knew, 54 years later, that, I'm in the spot where he spent his last day on earth. And it was so peaceful and so surreal. And I didn't know how I was going to react. I had 1,000 thoughts going through my brain, oh, am I going to fall down, bawl my eyes out? What am I going to do? And I just felt at peace. And a little bit longer, we eventually went to Nha Trang, Vietnam also, and got to tour the area, the air base where he was at too. So all in all, the trip was just phenomenal. We spent about 8 more days in Vietnam, just enjoying it, and I'm just, the whole time I'm wondering, I wonder if my dad was here. I wonder if my uncle was here. But it really, really, really did wonders for me. Um, a lot of weight was off my shoulders. I just felt like I did my dad proud. I think he would have been, happy that I made the attempt to go to where he was at.
And just to have all that work finally pay off in a really big way.
Yeah, and that was more validation, and after our guide took us to the spot where my uncle was killed, I know he researched it. I know he talked. There were no houses on the island where my dad was at, so I couldn't ask any questions, but I know my guide talked to locals. I just know because he took us to the spot. Just awesome, awesome feeling. Awesome, awesome.
Now, you're one of many who are, getting into researching their kind of warrior history and researching family members. What would you suggest to anyone who's trying to find anything about their family members? Any tips or just encouragement?
I just think you have to stay after it. I could have tapped out a number of times when I just kept getting the same stuff over and over again, or something a little different, but not what I wanted. And you have to find the right people that are willing to help. And I am, anybody who wants to get a hold of me and wants me to, send them the direction I went, I would be more than happy to do that. I've already had a soldier, a Vietnam vet, talk to me about, he now, after hearing me speak on the Vietnam War 50th anniversary commemoration, I met with him about a week later, and I'm like, we'll help you get to where you were. And so I'm kind of working on that right now. But if anybody I would be more than happy to help, just because I now have processes and I know who to contact. But you just have to stay after it, have to be vigilant.
Now, you have a third family member who makes you a Gold Star family member, and that's your brother. What can you tell us about him?
My brother enlisted after 9/11. He was in his 30s, I think, when he enlisted. He just kind of had the same mentality as my dad and my uncle. My brother was named after my uncle. Once my uncle was killed in October of 68, my brother was born in August of 69, and my dad named him after his brother. And my brother enlisted. He did a tour in 2005 in Iraq, I believe, and then went back in 2009, 2010. Was injured on a second tour. Um, Came back home stateside and just struggled with the pain and the injury, and eventually those injuries contributed to his death. Um, that one was a hard one for me because I was obviously old enough to understand it, and to he's my little brother, and to have him go down was just, it was a tough time in my life, tough part of my life.
Now, did you get to learn from some of the people he served with about what he was like when he
I've
was?
talked with a number of people. His funeral, I got to meet a lot of brothers, and I am now a brother of all the brothers he served with, and I keep in contact with a number of them. They said if there was a guy you would want in your foxhole, it was my brother. if there was a guy you would want to go to war with and know he had your back, it was my brother. They said just pressure under fire was a good way to describe him. That he was just, again, a good soldier.
And you've mentioned in some of your public presentations that his funeral was going to be protested. Can you share a little bit about what that was about?
So we had gotten word the funeral was in Klamath Falls, Oregon, which is my dad and uncle's hometown. My brother and I had lived there for a little while. The Westboro Baptist Church, we had heard that they were going to protest the funeral, and that was during the time when they were protesting lots of funerals. And the Patriot Guard riders got a hold of this information, and they said there's no way that this is going to happen. My brother's funeral was at our church of our childhood, and we then did the long procession to the cemetery from the church, and following 40 or 50 Patriot Guard riders, motorcycles, flags, leather jackets and vests, and knowing that they were there for my brother, oh, can't begin to tell you the pride and just the love that you have for these people that you don't even know, you just met, and maybe haven't even met some of them, but that they're willing to do that for someone that they don't know. But again, a brother of theirs, someone that served. I remember in the funeral part of the procession driving, we were in the front car, and the Patriot Guard riders were in front of us and behind us. And there was a long procession of cars. And I can remember a dad and his two little boys. They were probably 4 years old, 5 years old, something like that. He stops them, gets them, and they all saluted as we went by. I'll never forget that. Just awesome, awesome stuff. I remember my brother's funeral also. There was, I've got a really cool picture of it. It was calm day as calm gets, and sunny. And then all of a sudden this wind picks up, and the wind goes down the path to where we were at, ripples all of the American flags. And it was a strong wind. It blows through us. And like this Tasmanian devil whirlwind, you could watch it disappear into the sky. That was my brother. And everybody was like, the family members, did you feel that wind? Did you see it? And nobody else felt the wind. Everybody saw it, but only the family members felt it. I came, it was just some weird stuff that's happened. But just some really, really cool stuff.
Now, were you ever inspired to join the military?
So I was in college, and this was 1991, whenever Desert Storm hit. And I can remember I had the TV on all night long. I watched it. I watched the attack. And in my brain, I was like, maybe this is when I go. Maybe this is my time to join. But that initial attack happened so fast. It's kind of in and done. And it wasn't something that, it wasn't, I guess, a war that, needed a lot of people to do. So I finished out my college and became a teacher. But for a brief moment, for maybe over a night, maybe a couple of days, I was thinking I might be signing up.
But as you mentioned, your sons served. Why did they choose to serve?
So my oldest son, I'm obviously as an educator, a public servant. My oldest boy loves fighting fire. He was a wildland firefighter for 5 years. He was a Sawtooth hotshot for 2 years, which is one of the more elite hotshot groups in the United States. And he would he would helicopter into fires. Where everybody else was going away from, his group would go to and fight the fire basically from inside out. Stuff I wouldn't think of doing. My youngest son joined the Army, and he wanted to become a critical care flight medic so he could prevent other families from becoming Gold Star families. And when I heard him say that, and he's a young kid when he's saying this, I'm just like, wow, that's pretty deep. So he picked his job in the Army because he wants to prevent other families from becoming Gold Star families. It's like that. Wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard.
And your youngest, he's the one who has a tattoo that inspired the logo for your foundation, right?
That's correct. My son has a Highway 39 tattoo that was the inspiration for our logo for our foundation, and the tattoo has a lot of meaning behind it. As I told my kids that, if you're going to put something on your body, it needs to have a meaning, personal meaning, as does the tattoo I have, which is my dad and my uncles and my brother's dog tags. So my youngest son, Jake, he gets this tattoo, and his explanation of the meaning is incredible. It has a double meaning, two different meanings, one from his arm at his side and one when he salutes. That whole meaning for the tattoo is on our website, and it's way too long for me to even begin to try to remember what it is, but it's in detail on the website. So I would encourage you to read up on that.
Now, when did you come up with the inspiration to start your own foundation?
As a career educator, I've always been about kids. I love working with kids. It's my thing. Um, and I want to do something in my retirement. I just don't want to sit, and wither away, and put a lot of thought into it. And Gold Star kids, I need to help Gold Star kids. I need to help Gold Star families. So the capacity of which we're planning on helping, ideally scholarships, because again, that's educational, but there's a lot of need for counseling and mentoring programs and um, emotional healing. And so, however, we can help with that, we're going to do that. And we're just getting started. So, we're just in the early stages of just trying to collect some money to be able to even help anybody. And I realize it's going to be a process. It's going to be, a couple years before we get up and running full time, unless we get this huge donation and we can start off right away.
And if someone can't support financially, what else could they do to help your foundation?
Just support kids, support, families that have stories. Everybody has a story. My story, even though slightly unique, it's not unique. There's other people that have the same losses that I have, whether it's military or not. And we need to appreciate everybody's history. We need to appreciate everybody's story because everybody does have one, and everybody is who they are because of those stories and because of their past. And we just need to be appreciative of that. And we need to understand that when we are talking about people.
And speaking of kids, because you mentioned, you serve as well because you help the youth, but you haven't told us the story about what you did with kids in your schools, what they got to do at some of the games and events at the school.
Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. So as a educator, and 20 years of my career, last 20 years, I was an athletic director, athletic administrator, principal. But I always made it my job to put up the American flag at home football games. And I would always tell the student volunteer that was helping me, that this was the most important part of the game, that this is why we have the games. And so my last 5 years, the student Gabby Miniletti, and she's going to be thrilled that I mentioned her on this recording. Um, she was my student volunteer, and her last year, she was my student body president. And get this, for 5 years, I'm telling her that this is the most important part of the game. As she's heard it so much, she's now telling me that this is the most important part of the game. And during her commencement speech, because she was my student body president her senior year, she said that I had taught her that the game wasn't important. I taught her that the freedom to play the game was what was important. And I just sat there. It's like someone punched me upside the head. And I'm like, you know what? I never thought of it like that. And, this coming from a high school kid was so profound and so impactful. And I try to use that in a lot of my public speaking now, because she's so right. Everything we do is important, but it's not as important as the freedom to be able to do what we're doing. And we have those freedoms because we have sacrifice, and we have people that have lost a lot. And for her to be able to say that, it blew me away.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for sharing your family story with me today. And I invite anyone who listens to this story to remember the lives of Specialist 4 David Evans and Specialist 6 Norman Evans, who died during the Vietnam War, and Sergeant David Evans, who died from injuries sustained during his second tour in Iraq. But before we close out our conversation, you've had a lot of good messages and things for us to remember. But what's one key thing that you want people to walk away with after hearing this conversation?
I just want people to appreciate what they have. I want people to appreciate their freedoms, and I want them to appreciate their freedoms and understand them because of sacrifice. And if they can appreciate sacrifices that people have made, and we don't make those sacrifices. Obviously, me as a 6-month-old and a 2-month-old, I don't know what's going on, but the older I get, and you see people that take advantage of their freedoms, or are doing things and they don't appreciate their freedoms. I just want people to understand that they have what they have because people have sacrificed a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And if you'd
Thank
like
you
to
for
learn,
having me.
oh, absolutely. And if you'd like to learn more about Jeff and his family and the foundation, you can visit the foundation's website at www.hwy39foundation.org, and it'll be at the bottom of your screen. And if you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and visit our website at www.armyhistory.org to learn more soldier stories. Thank you.